My name's Natalie, and I'm here to give you a small glimpse of what it's like to live on a reservation. Before we start on our journey, what is a reservation?
One way to think about a reservation, I guess using today's more popular usage, is really of tribal homelands and homelands that have specific boundaries. Reservations really set off or illustrate the real unique relationship tribes have to the federal government.
There's a lot of, I want to say, ghetto-like, ghetto-like conditions, but you won't see fancy houses out there.
A second example comes much earlier, and this comes when the federal government was very much expanding its national territory boundaries, pushing west. And so reservations really initially were places of concentration where Native peoples were really relegated to just remnants of their tribal homelands.
Oh, you came from a reservation, so you must be coming from a low class family.
Dry, poor, and drunks.
And so the initial idea of reservations were that they were ceded, there were territories that were not ceded, but the federal government, armed with an idea of assimilation, really then was a way to confine Native people.
What do you think of when you hear the word reservation?
Drinking is like a big thing on the reservation. If you have nothing to do, it's just like go hang out and go drink.
Generally, the word reservation in its own term is a negative connotation.
Stuff that are kind of stereotypical, like how all Navajos drink and how they're all drunk.
Poverty, alcoholism, suicide, and I think there are words that are more of a social commentary on life within or on the reservation, especially among the youth. Suicide, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, all of that becomes the reality for many youth.
Any positive things?
I don't hear a lot of positive, it's mainly negative, but if I were to describe some stuff, it would be like the culture and how Navajos are like people from the reservation are typically how they're all cultural. They have this background of being traditional.
Just pride in everything that we do.
And we're strong, resilient people.
That celebration of community, your strength is in your family and in your relatives, and there's a sense of belonging.
What are stereotypes on the res?
Even within our own Navajo society, we do, they're so res, and a person from another society would say they're so ghetto. I mean, there's that. Even though they're Navajo, they're distinguishing between the two because somebody's more res than the other. And being more res, let me clarify that, is being someone who lives on the reservation who is often associated with being uneducated or closed-minded or basically a simpleton.
Probably John, because that's used a lot in the res, and probably just like Glani, and probably...
What's Galani mean?
Glani means just basically like a drunk that just stays out.
The media tends to focus on the more negative aspects of reservation life, and not necessarily the celebration of life that goes on the reservation. At the same time, reservations might be divisive in the sense that there seems to be a divide between those who grew up on a reservation versus those who grew up in an urban setting.
Generally, we refer to as Navajos who live on the border or within cities, urban Navajos, basically stating that they've lost their language, they lost their cultural identity, they've assimilated into the mainstream Western society, and so those people tend to think back of people that live on the res as they're ghetto, they're uneducated, they don't have the material possessions we have, and then vice versa. Navajos from the reservation view urban Navajos as as basically being in opposition. I want to say in opposition. I would say detrimental to the Navajo language and culture in general, because they're seen as the ones who've lost it, or they're slowly losing it, and they're assimilating into general culture. Then you have those who are referred to as city Navajos, who basically just live off the reservation.
Identity for many is rooted to places where they grew up, and then the sense that identity shouldn't just be placed or geographically specific, but rather identity comes from traditions. Regardless if you grew up in Los Angeles or Denver, but your traditions determine who you are as a person, not some fixed boundary line.
And so again, within our own society, we have distinguished ourselves as urban Navajos or as res Navajos. And so within our society, we collide with that mentality sometimes.
What are stereotypes off the res?
They probably all still think of us as dances with wolves. We're all still living in teepees and whatnot.
They don't succeed in like school or work. Another thing is, oh, you guys have a casino.
Their conceptions are: do you still live in a teepee, or just those Indian stereotypes? Do you still live? Do you still ride horses and whatnot? I say, yeah, we still ride horses, but for fun. We don't go to the trading post on our horse, And so there are still those Indian stereotypes that we still have to deal with.
Why do these stereotypes exist about the res?
Probably because we're poor and we have really nothing else to do with our time but drink.
There are very little jobs on the reservation, and so those who do stay on the reservation, they have to look and make ends meet in a different fashion. Majority of them have to live at convenience, have to work at convenience stores, or local city market or bash, which is a food market, or they have to work at a school system. They have to find odd jobs just to survive and make it on the reservation.
It's just really sad because you can't really do anything without money, really.
Greed, sleep, hunger, poverty, all these things are considered monsters because they attack us. We just can't see them. And so money is considered one of them, under greed, for a monster. And so I think that mentality is that monster has infiltrated us as a Navajo people and is misguiding us in our judgments and how we view other Navajos. And the Navajo family system that was supposed to be in place is really misconstrued again, or I don't want to say misconstrued. It's affected by greed, I guess.
I think it's mainly how people that come from the Navajo reservation or any other reservation, how they display themselves. Like they have this story of how they come from a family where their parents would drink, or they would go to casino, or they never succeed in school, so they kind of display that story amongst themselves. And it kind of just ties back to how people who don't live on a reservation kind of think, that's how all people that come from the reservation live, but that's not exactly how it works.
So, what's it like to live on the res?
Life is really simple. It's just day-to-day things.
A lot of dogs, apparently, a lot of starving dogs.
So we would stay remote and play around our house.
We used to have contests here to see who can get out of the ditch in one run. You're not a res kid unless you pulled some of those cactus needles out of your foot or your hands, your legs, your back, your butt. Just hope I don't fall with this very expensive camera. Hey, go.
That it's all desert, dry.
There used to be a pond here. It's not there no more.
But the thing was, my mom always had chores for us to do, and so we were always busy with chores, or we were always busy with. We had horses, we had ATVs, we had a lot of things to keep us busy.
Outhouse?
A lot of homeless people as well.
Outhouse?
Everyone went out on Friday nights to watch basketball or football, or to support the teams.
These are actually pretty fancy outhouses because they're labeled men and women. It's not a reservation unless you got throwing away trash in the ditch somewhere.
No one really has respect for what they are given anymore. So they just throw trash anywhere.
You'll always find abandoned cars that don't work.
That there is schools out there.
Street signs in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of people who drive on this road at night. Like to come out here and party.
The idea that you grow up in your grandmother's house, and it seems pretty common where you spend significant time with your grandparents if they're alive.
It was always family, 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 family. And so being around it has really brought me up, or has really molded me to be the person that I am. I'm very introverted in the sense that I don't go out of my way to meet new people.
There are homes that are very humble, and you can tell the people, you know, I don't know if it's a struggle day-to-day life, but they give you the best they have to give.
Fibrid. Lots and lots of fibrid.
Reservation standards for being well off is being gainfully employed, you know, having a steady income. Not everyone has that. You know, people can make a livelihood out of doing beadwork, and then you're kind of going from project to project, and so there's no certainty when you know, make your living off of your own skills.
While I'm in confession mode here on my lovely rock, the one thing I feel would best describe what it's like living on a reservation, it's just the silence that you hear. It's just a nice place to just get lost in it, I guess you could say. It's always just quiet and there's no one always around. It's just a big space with a lot of noises that are just nature oriented. Wind, birds, cows. I saw a cow passing by a little while ago. I thought it was gonna run at me.
It really has to come from within the community. I know the media and the dominant society will always be focused on the negative or the deficiencies that can be found within reservation communities. So for me, it really goes back to, one, you know, like really restoring the family as a central unit. And I mean like more than just mother and father, but, you know, aunts and uncles and grandparents, and having, you know, parents who are present in the lives of children, and a connection to the community again. Really being focused on the culture and the language, and having people put aside the politics.
Just having like job opportunities, just mainly opportunities just to keep ourselves occupied, so we wouldn't have to look towards those negative things.
Get different people's perspective. Like for me, I came from the reservation and I'm well educated, as well as I came from a family where my parents didn't drink or didn't go to casino because my parents were successful. They went to school and they got their degrees.
Again, we have to establish that mentality that we are a nation. We're no longer just a band of wild Indians out there. We have defined ourselves as a nation.
Despite all the overwhelming challenges, I noticed that no matter how difficult life can be on the res, I still manage to see people smile. And it always gives me hope that we will always endure.